Hey there, I'm Heather McGowan. We're going to talk about how we can solve the loneliness epidemic. Some questions we're going to answer during this video. We're going to talk about how business can be a partial solution. We're going to talk about the power of saying someone's name. And I'm going to tell you a story about a bartender. At the end of this, you're going to understand how loneliness is our problem to solve. Let's look at one of the ways we can solve the loneliness epidemic. Let's talk about the healthcare system and how we can both diagnose and treat the loneliness epidemic. So first we can screen for it. We can do that like we screen for other risk factors as the UCLA loneliness scale. Next, we can train all clinicians to spot evidence of loneliness like they do with other things. Let's talk about treatment. Treatment, we can actually prescribe social outings for people. We can prescribe things like joining clubs and being volunteers. They're doing this already in the UK. We can have community health workers do visits with individuals as part of what they do. We can start tracking loneliness across the lifespan, just like we do other risk factors, because loneliness is, next to cigarettes and obesity, one of the leading underlying causes for so many other diseases. So we have a vested interest in making it part of our healthcare screening. And we can measure loneliness as a health outcome. Now let's talk about how business can be a partial solution for the loneliness epidemic. Internally, we can talk about what you can do to help your own workforce. So one of the things you can do to help your own workforce is you can build belonging into work, and you can measure it like you measure engagement. So you can build belonging into work and measure it like you measure engagement. Make it measuring loneliness like you do engagement, one of the KPIs you measure at work. You can train managers to build psychological safety. You can train managers to actively listen. And you can train managers to do what's called mental health first aid. Now let's talk about what your company can do externally to your customers, because part of the solving the loneliness epidemic isn't internal, it's external as well. And some businesses are uniquely qualified to do it. For some organizations, you're hiring people into their first jobs. If you're hiring someone into their first job, whether it be quick service restaurant, fast food, or working in a movie theater, or working in a coffee shop, or any other first job, you're actually giving somebody the life skills that they may have for the rest of their life that they may not get anywhere else. So you give some of the best adulting skills in some of those first jobs. So first, you're setting up humans to be participants in society. Second, some occupations have very high level of contact with the outside public. That's an opportunity to create micro-interventions into helping folks. So let's talk about that specifically. Let's talk about the power of frontline workers. And now let's look at contacts per hour. So if you're working in a retail environment like a grocery store, you may have somewhere between 20 and 40 contacts every hour. 20 to 40 contacts an hour, that's a lot of opportunity for micro-interactions. In quick service restaurants, it's somewhere between 20 and 30 an hour. If you're working in hospitality, it's somewhere between 15 and 25 an hour. And call center operators, although they're not physically present with other people, they can have voice interactions, and those are somewhere between 15 and 25 an hour. So when we look beyond the number of contacts an hour, let's look at some of the occupations that have high meaningful contact. So banking and finance. So you financial advisor, you have very intimate information about people. You can get to know them. You can have meaningful connection. Even though they're not important, primary connections in people's lives, it can have an impact on the loneliness epidemic. Same with the hospitality, particularly at higher levels, hospitality industry can do it. Certainly we see it in healthcare, and healthcare workers can get to know people really well. I mean, I had lost my father and my brother through hospice, and the hospice workers were amazing. They became members of the family for brief periods of time. So there's lots of time where healthcare workers can come in and really help you in a period of the loneliness epidemic. Certainly systems of education, teachers, coaches, etc., have high meaningful contact with people. So if you've got a business that works with a lot of frontline workers, some who have a high number of contacts per hour, those are plenty of opportunities for micro-interactions that can be very meaningful. People who have high meaning interactions, like those people in finance or teaching or hospitality or healthcare workers, they can have a meaningful connection in helping people with the loneliness epidemic. Now I want to tell you the bartender story. So I'm originally from Boston, and there's a bartender in Boston, we'll call her Kay, because I don't have permission to use her name, although she'd probably find it funny. She worked at a bar in Boston in a little strip mall. And I had two friends, and my two friends were like, oh, we got to go to dinner at this place in the strip mall. I'm like, why are we going for dinner in a strip mall? And they're like, well, Kay's working. So Kay's working. When Kay was working, you couldn't get a seat at this bar, because Kay would say, hey, Heather, I know how you like your chicken. Hey, Heather, I know you have a glass of beer first, and then sometimes you have a glass of wine later. Or, hey, Heather, I know you like extra lemon on your chicken. She would remember everything about you, and it felt like home. And she would also know what you're working on, where you're traveling. And she'd say, hey, I know you need an accountant. Do you know this person over here? You should meet them. And suddenly there's this huge community of people around this bartender named Kay. And then Kay left because that restaurant closed to another bar. And suddenly people were going from one side of Boston to the other for a dinner that frankly wasn't that great, to get attention from Kay and connection and belonging in a community. So when I talk to fast food organizations or I talk to restaurant industry, I do that a lot. I tell them the bartender effect, the impact that someone like a bartender can have on creating community, driving revenue. You could not get more profitable than Kay's bar because there was never an empty bar seat. So that's a way of thinking about what are some of these roles in society and where are the new sort of weavers. David Brooks talks about the weavers, the people who look out for other people, who create connection no matter what job they're in. Those are the kind of people you want to look for. In my community, I live in a little community in Florida, and I call us a folding table community. This may not be right for everybody, but it's right for our community, and I'm happy to show this visual, which is some of us at Thanksgiving. And the folding table community is this mantra that nobody gets left out. Nobody's alone. We scan the neighborhood of our friends and our acquaintances and neighbors we don't even really know. Because I had 2 people for Easter dinner I had never met before. And you have this mantra that says nobody's alone, and we have folding tables in our garages and we share them. So there's always a space for somebody. And when you live in that kind of community, I would probably say we have the lowest level of loneliness in any other community. That's a decision. Not everybody community can do it, but if you can do it, take the folding table mentality. So let's think about other things we can do as individuals. So maybe you're not a folding table person. Maybe you don't live in a folding table community. Maybe you're not the one to start it. But what we can do as individuals is experiment. So 2 researchers at Riverside in 2020 had done this experiment, and they said, I wonder if we could kind of ask people to experiment with socialization. So whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I'm actually an introvert, even though I'm a public speaker, ask people for a week to act like the opposite. And they had people in 2 groups and then they switched. Act like the opposite. If you're normally an introvert, act like an extrovert. If you're normally an extrovert, act like an introvert. If it was your week to be an introvert, they wanted you to be more quiet and reserved and talk to fewer people. If it was your week to be an extrovert, they asked you to be more spontaneous and more assertive, and they asked people how they felt at the end of these 2 weeks. Regardless of whether you were an introvert or an extrovert, at the end of the extrovert week, you might have been more exhausted if you were an introvert, but people feel it had more positive feelings. They had more optimism. They felt more connected. So we actually can force ourselves to connect. This little 2-week experiment did teach us we can connect more. We can force ourselves out of our comfort zone, at least temporarily, to make more connections. You might have heard this in one of my other videos because I think I have mentioned it once before. The halo effect. So I gave myself this challenge. I realized that I was sleepwalking through my day. I got home at the end of the day and realized that I couldn't remember anybody I had seen other than people that I knew. So I interact with people all day long, as do you. How often are you paying attention? How often do you look them in the eye? How often do you say hello? So my challenge is this. It's called the hello effect. And I'd love it to see it go viral as the ice bucket challenge. For 24 hours, look every person you interact with in the eye and say hello. If they've got a name badge on, say their name. When you say people's names, certain parts of their brain light up. And there's a lot of people doing anonymous work out there who never hear their name. So these micro interactions matter. When we create micro interactions and we create those weak ties, people feel seen and heard. They start to feel a level of trust. It starts to combat loneliness, and it starts to build some psychological safety in our society. So this is the hello effect. It's my challenge to do. If you do it, write in the comments and tell me how it went. I'd really like to see this take off. My name is Heather McGowan. If this has been helpful, click on the link below where we're going to discuss work in the loneliness epidemic and what things we can talk about there. Thanks.